There's a narrative in Israeli society that in the 3 weeks leading up to the SixDay War, regular people were digging graves, morbidly expecting they or their family members would soon occupy those graves. It's not true. Here's the truth. In the days before the war, just two decades after the liberation of Auschwitz, municipalities were digging mass graves. Regular Israelis were digging shelters. This summer, we marked 50 years since Milchemet Sheshet Yamim, the Six-Day War. But this Rosh Hashanah is further fraught with historical touchpoints because this secular year we also mark 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, in which it was written, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. And 5778 will mark both 70 years since the fateful November 29th UN vote for partition and the May 14th declaration of the State of Israel and the beginning of the War of Independence. I want to begin our Rosh Hashanah together with a shameless plug. I'm very excited to share with you, beginning this January, a brand new curriculum created by the Shalom Hartman Institute. It's called Israel's Milestones and Their Meanings, and we at Beth Am have access to it because of my ongoing fellowship at Machon Hartman. This summer, while I was studying in Jerusalem, we were introduced to the framework of the curriculum, and with your permission, I want to take some time this evening to make the case for why the Six-Day War in particular was such a pivotal moment, not only in Israeli history, but in Jewish history as well. I'll share a few salient points to whet your appetite, but the bulk of the learning will come on Thursday evenings beginning in early 2018. It's hard to grasp, especially for those of us born since '67, the profound anxiety radiating throughout the Jewish world in the days and weeks leading up to June 5th. And it's impossible to convey the sense of elation and relief when only 6 days later the fledgling Jewish state more than tripled its size, secured its borders, and returned after 2,000 years to cities and sites chanted in Haftarot on Shabbat. Perhaps it's understandable then why so few voices that summer had anything remotely critical to say about the fact that millions of Arabs were now living under Israeli occupation. Dr. Tal Becker, legal advisor for the Israeli Foreign Ministry and a senior member of the Israeli peace negotiation team, it's a long-standing gig, lays out the conundrum in this way. Few words, he writes, trigger as much emotion and division across the Jewish world as the word occupation. For some, 1967 is seen as the beginning of our redemption. For others, the cause of our moral downfall. I bet some of you here tonight started to squirm at the very mention of occupation, while others were probably fuming that I managed to get through 4 paragraphs of an Israel sermon without mentioning the word Palestinian. You see the dilemma. To give us just a flavor of what it was like in those heady days following the victory of June 10th, here's a sampling of just portions of Israeli poems written in the aftermath of the war. This from Naomi Shemer's Al Kanfei HaKesef on Silver Wings about the victorious Air Force. Notice the biblical imagery. He passes like the blade of a sickle. He is like an arrow sent out whistling by. He writes a letter of fire from Golan to the Red Sea. They ride on silver wings, heroes of the wind, and the clouds, the strong and the good, like birds soaring high. Or Yossi Gamzo, the secular left-wing poet, in his The Western Wall. The paratrooper stood next to the kotel. Just him of the entire platoon, he told me that death does not have a shape, just a caliber, 9 millimeters. That's all. He told me, a tear I will not shed, and silently cast down his eyes, but grandfather, So help me God is buried over there on Olive Mount, the kotel of moss and sadness, the kotel of moss and sadness. Some people have a heart like a stone, some stones have the heart of man. It was the rare poet who wrote a lament in those days. An outlier was Hanoch Levine in his play, You and I in the War to Come. He wrote, "Where did my child go, my little good child? Black pawn captures white pawn. My father won't return, never will he come. White pawn captures a black pawn. Tears in all the rooms and silence in the gardens. The king is playing with the queen." The play was a flop. No one wanted to hear what Levine had to say. The course I'll be teaching includes some of these artistic reactions to these Israeli milestones, but the bulk of it is scholarship and foundational text of the State of Israel. This evening, I want to share just one scholar's thinking on the significance of 1967. Here's Dr. Micha Goodman's take, based on his current bestseller, the cleverly titled Milkud Shishim Vesheva, or Catch 27, which actually, I just received this, the new Jewish Review of Books had a very nice review in this issue. What is the paradox at the heart of the Six-Day War? To understand this, we have to go back in time to the years before Israel was a reality. What is Herzl's rationale for Der Judenstaat, for the Jewish state? It's about Jewish survival. He sees a Jewish population in Western Europe largely comfortable and assimilated, but precarious. Anti-Semitism is real, and in Herzl's estimation, the Jews will never be safe until they, like other nations of the world, have a sovereign land to call their own. 1948 to 49, long after Herzl's death, marks a dream fulfilled and then deferred. A state for the Jews is indeed a reality, but the true security Herzl sought, his solution for the problem of anti-Semitism with Jews sitting as equals among the community of nations, those aspirations are laid to waste as the fledgling state ekes its way to the Green Line's armistice of 1949. A mere 3 years after 2/3 of European Jewry are eradicated, the state of Israel's almost demise is a sobering lesson about the place of Jews on the world stage. So if Herzl is the forefather of secular Zionism, religious Zionism can claim as its patriarch Abraham Isaac Kook, the chief rabbi of pre-state Eretz Israel. Kook envisions Jewish return to the land not as a pragmatic matter, nor as a solution to anti-Semitism, but as a romantic re-engagement with a long-lost lover or a family member. But Kook's vision is only partially fulfilled in 1949 as well. 2 of the 4 historic holy sites, Hebron and Jerusalem's Old City, remain cut off from the Jewish state. The Jewish side of partition, even the expanded version after the ceasefire, was historically not all that Jewish, actually. The Philistines lived in the coastal lands, cities like Ashkelon and Ashdod. Jews had sovereignty over those places for moments in history, but not over long periods of time. The Negev was, well, the Negev. It was there. We walked through it every once in a while, but it wasn't really a place to sort of build a home, at least not until Ben Gurion. True, the Galilee was Jewish, but most action in the biblical narrative takes place where? In Judea, in Samaria, in the hills between the Levant and the Jordan River. Goodman says the feeling in those days among the religious Zionists was that we aren't really returning to our actual homeland. It's sort of homeland adjacent. Now fast forward 18 years. What changes in 1967 in the surprising, death-defying victory of the Six-Day War when the mass graves were denied their share of Jewish bodies? Herzl's disciples can finally claim to have extra land for secure borders, but which can also be used as a bargaining chip for peace. The Golda Meirs, the Yitzhak Rabins say, we can finally force them to accept us as co-equals in the community of nations. Simultaneously, Rav Kook's disciples also feel their dream has been fulfilled. Quote, "We are no longer like a body of amputated limbs," people would say. Shechem, Beit Lechem, Chevron, the tomb of the patriarchs, the Kotel, the Temple Mount, Har Habayit B'Yadenu, the radio broadcast from the wall. We have come home. And if that's not a sign of Mashiach, the entire thing happened in 6 days, the exact same amount of time it took for God to create the world. Beshert. So my friends, you can see where this is going. Catch 67 is what happens when, in less than 1 week, after thousands of years of wandering, insecurity, even genocide, two conflicting messianic utopian dreams become reality. Over the next few decades, the dreams of both sides will begin to fade. 2 intifadas will take their toll. Oslo's failure will exact its price on the body politic, the Israeli peace of mind, victims of terror, and of course the Palestinian people as well. In Israel today, few talk about peace, not because they don't believe in it or because they don't want it, but because they don't think it's achievable. What will be in Israel's next 50 years, 70 years, 100 years? What, if anything, can be done by Israelis, by Palestinians, by the Arab world, by Americans to help move things along? This is Rosh Hashanah. Perhaps the promise of 5778 will be one of realism. Perhaps here in the churning and tumultuous United States and there in the swirling Middle East, we will have to claim small victories, confidence-building measures. When Micha taught us this material over the summer, he joked that standing in front of a congregation any given Saturday right now on, frankly, either side of the Atlantic, the entirety of the sermon could be, "It's all going to hell. Shabbat Shalom." I'll try it next week. Is there hope? Of course there's hope. Israel's very anthem means hope. Hatikva isn't a battle hymn. It's not a victory song. It's a plea for a better tomorrow. But perhaps the hope we must feel this new year is a yearning for granular, not grand solutions, modest, not messianic steps. The Talmud, Micha points out, speaks of how learned individuals don't make peace, they lay the groundwork for peace. Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. It says in Masechet Brachot, the sages increase peace in the world. They don't make peace. The sources and ideas that we'll explore together in the Hartman course will not offer simple answers, but they will help us navigate the tricky terrain of modern Israel and what it means in the Jewish imagination. We'll celebrate through our learning this monumental year in our history by interrogating ancient and modern sources and our honest confrontation with the complex nature of Jewish sovereignty. I suspect we'll come a little closer to a more authentic engagement with and understanding of the Jewish state past, present, and God willing, for many, many generations into the future. As the rabbis say, Tashma, come and hear, come and learn. I hope to see you then, and also before. Shana Tova.